Hello and welcome to a very special edition of Champ Speak. As you would know by now, Champ Speak is all about Indian Oil's elite international sportspersons who've done the country and the corporation proud over the years. And who better to have someone who has changed the face of Indian badminton, first as a player and then as a coach. The name spells magic, Pullela Gopichand. He's won accolades, whatever one could ask for, be it the Padma Bhushan, the Dronacharya Award, and he's been an inspiration to a generation of shuttlers. It's indeed a proud moment for us to have Pullela Gopichand with us on Champ Speaks. Welcome, Gopi.
Thank you very much, Vishnu.
Gopi, you know, the last year and a half has been tough for the players. Obviously, you as the chief national coach to manage all this during the pandemic. I'm sure you would have had to think out of the box to, have players train.
Well, it's definitely been tough. We've had the tournament schedule not very sure. The Olympics itself was in doubt. And also the extended lockdown, because once the initial 2 months of the lockdown were over, where people were relatively okay because they've thought it of as if it was rest. But post that, people started to feel, why are we training for? When is the next set of tournaments? What is going to happen to our careers? So I think a lot was going into the players' minds, and it was very important to keep them positive and to have the entire atmosphere kind of in a way charged up so that the players could perform well.
Well, Gopi, one speaks to you, the first thing which Gopichand, All England Champion 2001. 1980, the great Prakash Padukone, and after such a long wait, you went through a very tough period, battled lots of injuries. Share with us how was that journey for that All England and your victory. Of course, it's, it's in the memory of every badminton lover.
I think you should, you know much of the story, but if I have to think of it, I think Prakash sir winning the All England in 1980 was huge, because for all of us, what he had achieved and we Indians could achieve as a possible target was something which Prakash sir showed can happen. He was in some sense godly in that sense, but it was also something that we never thought we could achieve. So growing up, seeing that achievement, seeing him being in a sport which had an idol like him was really something which I'm so happy about. Having said that, when we were growing up, life was tough. Families were not necessarily looking at sport as a career. So when my parents wanted me to play sport or I wanted to play sport, we had a lot of resistance from a lot of people around. But luckily parental support was 100%. And also over time, I kind of settled to the fact that I was going to have, or excited to the fact that badminton would be a career. Luckily at that time I joined Indian Oil. So luckily that support or the job at hand made things a lot more settled in some sense. But also those were the years. I had in 94, I had an ACL tear, 96 and I had multiple surgeries on my left knee between 96 and 98. And after that, the journey was pretty good in some sense, because I didn't have an injury for about 3 years. So 98, 99, 2000 and 2001, those 4 years I didn't have any major injuries. And that's when I got the majority of the titles and also the All England. For us, growing up, it was in Andhra Pradesh, then Hyderabad. We didn't even have a national champion. So for me to think of winning something at the world level was kind of impossible. But every step I moved, the next step looked possible. And that is how step after step and tournament after tournament, I think the victory at the All England was happened. For me, of course, as a player, that's the biggest thing. Growing up, that was the biggest tournament. Today we can say, yes, the Olympics or the World Championships. But growing up, we didn't have the World Championships and the Olympics. So the All England was the biggest title. and for me to have achieved it is something great as a player. But not only that, it was great to actually be as a foundation for me to become a coach.
Yeah, that's of course your next journey from a player to a coach. But just thinking back, both our All England winners, Prakash Padukone and yourself, both come across as very, very balanced. Even while you speak, also it's very measured and very, down to earth people. Both of you come very humble, very down to earth. That's very endearing. When you look at sports idols, all the players who are coming up always look up to players who have achieved. You, Prakash Padukone, and what they see is not only on the court but off the court also very dignified.
I think I was lucky. I could see Prakash sir growing up, and I'm sure his influence is there. Of course, in sport you realize that winning is not permanent, and it's very important that you have to be grounded, because if you fly too high, then the sure fall when it happens is going to hit you hard. So I think you're measured to ensure that you don't get hard, get beaten up, or when you fall you don't get hurt too much. But I think truly as a sport, I just feel that it's only by chance that I was very lucky that I could play the sport, and a lot of people's help and support has been there. The people who have coached me, my parents, the entire ecosystem, and I'm so happy that we had somebody like Prakash sir to emulate and follow. So I think it's been a great journey in that sense.
Well, Gopi, you also spoke about, while you were playing, it was tough. Injuries are always tough. But you also had to cope with, that is how we are as a nation, so many adverse remarks, whether you will ever be able to play again. But you fought, and I believe the doctor was Dr.
Ashok
Rajgopal, who, share with us of that. How did you overcome that psychological barrier?
I think for me the biggest thing growing up was that we didn't have any other source of feeling happy. My only happiness was playing sport, and when I was injured I was unhappy, and there was no other way to replace the happiness which I found in sport. So I had to find my happiness back on the badminton court. So failing wasn't an option. My life was revolving only around badminton, and that probably made me come out of the difficult situation. Because today when you look at sports science, when you look at things around, you are different, your injuries are taken care of. Having said that, even today an ACL tear for a singles player is a big injury. We haven't had many people recover out of it. So back then, 25-30 years ago, I think it was a totally different ball game. So I was very fortunate that I had Ashok Rajgopal as a doctor, because he would not just be a doctor, but he was like a psychologist. He would say, and I random people, and I would wear this big brace when I was playing. So people would say, Gopi can't play, ye langda ho gaya hai, and all that thing. So whatever came my way, if it was positive, I took it and moved forward. If it was negative, I took it as a challenge and moved forward. Because as I've said, I think losing wasn't an option. More importantly, being away from the sport wasn't an option. And also, one of the other things which happened was people wanted me to just move out just a bit to play doubles, or to play a badminton style which was more defensive. But somewhere down the line I had decided that I will play the game on my terms, and if I get injured, so be it. But I'm not going to back off, because I only like to play it aggressively. So that's how the sport has been. And for me, those years when I was injured, when I look at people, they come up and say, Gopi, you would have been such a great player had it not been for the injuries. But truly, I do feel that the injuries have made me the person I am, the player whom I am, and also the coach who I am. Because for me, without the injuries, probably I would have never matured, or I would have never loved the sport as much as I do today.
Yeah, well, Gopi, just taking off from what you just said, you know, I read somewhere also that you took up coaching. One of the things which you had in mind is players, the new generation should not go through what you went through. You talk about modern medical science, the support system that you have built as a coach. And I'm sure it would not have been easy setting up this academy for once, you know, you had to, mortgage your house, so many difficulties, your family pulled in. So, you know, those experiences I'm sure would be very inspiring.
I think for me, whatever I've learnt in my journey, because when Prakash sir won the All England and maybe after a few years, we kind of lost touch to how it feels to be playing at the world level. So when we were growing up, Prakash sir was there, but he was too high for us to even dream about. It was like it happened kind of a thing, but really was he from the same blood and sweat? We were not sure, because we were all at that time losing first round, second rounds. Our predecessors, the immediate past, were all first, second rounds. So they were happy to participate. And for us, typically it would be like by the time we go from Hyderabad to Delhi, 27 to 26 hours by train, you go stay in Paharganj 2-3 days, then you go to Chanikyapuri for visa, then you go to Baman Lorry in Ashoka for ticketing. So this whole journey would be like a week, 10 days. We haven't played badminton, we haven't seen the racket. Then we go abroad, play with a Ionic shuttle which used to turn like this, and we would play in huge stadiums, we would miss shuttles. So at the All England, the previous years when we were playing, the fastest matches were by the Indians, because we lost in some 10 minutes time. So that is the kind of record we had. So growing up, it was kind of very big to actually think on the highest level. So for me, in this entire journey as a coach or as a player, I learnt a lot of things from my travel, from my coaches, from my own experiences. And then by 2000, I just felt that I knew what it needed to be a badminton player. I knew the formula. But in 2002, by repeated overuse of my right knee, it just got worn out. And I had multiple fractures on my right foot, and my right knee was hurting, and I had another surgery on my right knee. And by the end of 2002, I had the formula, but I didn't have the body to use it. So I said, what's the best way? Because I knew nothing apart from badminton. So I just went to the badminton court, picked up, gathered kids who were around. Kashyap was one of them. He was the oldest of that group. He was about 16, 17. And started to coach them in 2003, in fact. And yes, in that group there were people, whether it's Sikki or Sai Praneeth or Saina or Sindhu. I think all of them came from that small group, and it's been great journey. It hasn't been easy, because one of the things you realize is you as a coach are good, but you cannot do justice unless you have the infrastructure to back you up. So we needed to put this place. We needed to put this place because you needed courts, you needed a gym, you needed food to eat, you needed a place to stay, you needed a ground, you needed a swimming pool, you needed recovery. So you needed all these places in one, because otherwise if I am spending time going somewhere to train, going to another place to the gym, going to another place to the track, I think this would have been a big challenge. And all my life, I would wait for the watchman to come, I would wait for the lights to be on, because power cuts would be there. You're waiting for shuttles, waiting for players, waiting for coaches, you're waiting for the gym to open. If a marriage is there, then the stadium is closed. So these were the kind of challenges I grew up from an infrastructure perspective. And I was hoping that if I have a chance, at least the next generation should not have this problem. And that is when we caught up with this idea. Now the idea was too big, the money required was huge. I expected as an All England champion, you go begging, you will get the money. But I guess I was wrong. So we had to we had good people support. I had N. Prasad, who gave me 2 crores to start off with on day one. That was the reason why we could even imagine or think. The then government gave the land, which was a great reason to start. But I think to finish it, I had to really pull a lot of my own resources and everything what I had. And glad we took that decision as a family to do this, because it's something I think was very important for Indian badminton.
And I think the family, you spoke about the family, Lakshmi herself, a top badminton player, that would have helped, having that sort of support at home.
Well, I think one was the build-up of the academy. The second thing is my mother, my father, my wife Lakshmi. I think it was very, very important that they shared the burden of the academy, because for me, I wasn't there to take care of the family in some sense. I would leave early in the morning, I would come back late in the night, and I did it when we were newly married. We had kids, and she and my mom just took care of all of it. So for me, the biggest thing was my family's support helped me ensure that I wasn't bothered with the administration of the academy or the family support which was needed, because there was no complaint from that. And Indian Oil helped me monetarily to ensure that I didn't have the money problem to start working in a place, because my salary was coming from there. So I think these were huge important things. Today when we look back, I think it could have been very easily not happened, but that's where I think it's God's grace that everything fell in place at the right time and right people were there. Although there were a lot of people who had created issues, but God definitely had sent the right people to ensure that things would stay on and support is there from all corners.
Yes, Gopi, as you very rightly said, God ensures that, everything happens for the good. And this academy has produced so many world champions, we've had Saina Nehwal, PV Sindhu, and you said, right from that junior world championship which happened in Pune, it has been, especially in singles to start with, it's been upswing for Indian badminton.
Yes, I think if you look at, say, the times, say just to say 82, 83, just after Prakash sir, and the next 20 years of Indian badminton, you probably had one Commonwealth medal, one All England champion, but you just add 2007 and 8 to the list, and for the last say 13 years, we've only had every tournament, whether it's Commonwealth, Asian Games, World Championships, Olympics, I think we've come back with medals, and I think it's great for Indian badminton, and I hope that we are able to continue doing even more.
And Gopi, talking about accolades, Arjuna Award, the Khel Ratna, the Dronacharya Award, the Padma Shri, the Padma Bhushan, means you may say that God has been kind, but this is something any athlete, forget badminton, would aspire, any Indian athlete would aspire. So which of these, do you treasure the most?
For me, the All England is the biggest one. The Olympic medals are very, very important. But having said that, I think I'm sure I will enjoy it even more when I retire from the sport in some sense, where I can be happy to look at the medals and enjoy it, or my generations after me will relish it even more. But for me, I think each medal or each award has been more of a responsibility than anything else. It almost feels strange, ironic in some sense, that I've really never enjoyed my medals or the awards, because for me each one of them is almost like the country expects more. And so honestly, I don't think I've really got off and say that I have done it and it's the end of the world. And I hope I am able to say it at some point of time, and truly. But I think each one has served as a big motivation for me And I also feel very strongly, because I have benefited from Karna Malleshwari's medal in Sydney, because her medal, her felicitation function, and me part of looking up on her on the stage, I think was a huge motivation for me. I think the medals are a big motivation for us, but also I think they're a huge motivation for the younger generation. So I do believe that when people come into the room and watch these medals, or if as kids they hear about it, I think it just somewhere inspires them a bit, and that inspiration is worth a lot, is what I believe.
Gopi, as far as coaching also, you have brought in so many new initiatives, and one which has struck me much is you spoke about sports literacy in schools. So if you can share about that, that's a very new, novel concept that one has heard of.
I think in the last, say 30 odd years, or even now I think more in the last 40, 50 years, we as a nation have grown alphabetically. We have more people who are able to read and write. We've grown numerically, more people who are able to add and subtract and multiply. But if you look at a previous generation to now, we don't have so many people who are able to run, jump, throw, kick as much as the previous generation. So a whole generation of people have lost out on physically being literate, because we don't know in a city like Bombay how many kids have actually thrown a ball to the furthest where it can go, or to the highest place it can go, or who have been able to run fully or jump as high as. So I think kids' growth in this generation has not grown physically as much as they can. And the thought is that it's not about being the best in the country or best in the world, but typically being the best of what you can be. And I think that is very, very important. Not all of us are endowed with the genes to become an Olympic medalist. Not all of us in our country can afford the costs which are needed to be an Olympic athlete. But I think all of us should aspire to be the best versions of what we can be physically. And it could be somebody who is short, thin, tall, somebody who has a physical injury. It doesn't matter, but his best version of himself is something I think is very, very important. So physical literacy as a concept is about motivating people to like physical exercise, to challenge their ability, and to be able to do it for the rest of their lives, so that we are able to, whether it's depression, life lessons, whether it's health, I think all of these are connected to physical activity. And the more gadgets we have, the more entertainment we are looking at from various initiatives or options, we are getting away from physical activity. So that's what it is. So I believe it's talking about sport beyond medals.
Well said, Gopi. You know, what a inspiring thought that is. And you know, you'd like to speak to you continuously. There's so much to learn from you, Gopi, but you know, time and tide wait for no one. So maybe on another occasion we will definitely catch up. But it was indeed so much, you know, knowledge, so much of knowledge gained by just speaking to you. Thank you so much for taking time off and speaking to us on Champ Speak. Really appreciate. Thank you, Gopi.
Thank you very much.
Well, that's Pullela Gopichand for you, All England champion. You know, the accolades, if I continue saying, it may take an entire program. It's indeed wonderful. And I'm sure all IOCians who would be listening in would be inspired. As he said, it's not that everyone can go on to become an Olympic champion, a world champion, but every kid can try and become to be the best that he can be physically. And that's the thought which goes across. That's the inspiration that we get from Pullela Gopichand. So until the next time, this is your host S. Kishore bidding goodbye. But we will continue to feature Indian Oil's elite sports persons in our shows to come. Thank you for watching.